Hello and welcome back. The Vancouver Canucks are for real. This is a trend that I looked at last season when they hired Rick Tocchet, and I mentioned how he tightens his teams up defensively, and that helps his goaltending, and that has happened for Thatcher Demko. We also have EP40 playing like Superman with a hat trick, 4 goals, 3 assists in 3 games last week. In this video, we'll do what we usually do. We'll look at the schedule, find you some waiver ads and goalie streams for week 5, and look at some trending players either in this video or tomorrow's video if I split them up. But let's start by looking at the daily Faceoff schedule. So 9 teams play 4 games next week, which is nice, but not all schedules are created equal. You have Columbus, they have 4 games with a road back-to-back at the end of the week and a really tough schedule with a lot of travel involved. So this is going to be difficult for any of the guys that you pick up from them. Dallas with a difficult start, and then they go on the road for 3 road games, including a road back-to-back, so that's going to be difficult for them as well, but they are a really good team this year, and they're playing really good defensively, so Wedgwood will be coming up in the goaltending section of this video. Then you've got the perfect schedule in Florida. We'll get back to them in a second. You have Minnesota, who has the back-to-back in the middle of the week. They're going through the New York swing. Islanders, Rangers, and Sabres, the road back-to-back is going to be difficult for them, but if you're looking for a pickup, maybe start this Friday into Sunday, because you get those 2 off-night games, and they aren't likely to, well, there's definitely some travel involved, and there is a bit of a difficult schedule matchup here against Dallas, but this would be a nice 2-game set here if you're looking to spread your lineup out where you don't have all your games on Saturday. Montreal is not doing a lot of traveling, but they do have a very difficult schedule with all of these really good teams that they have to face, including Boston and Vancouver back-to-back. Even though it's at home, that is going to be difficult. Then a little bit further down, San Jose, we're not really going to talk about, except for the fact that if you want to pick up somebody who's playing San Jose from the Ducks, let's say, on Sunday, the Ducks have a 3-game week, but they do have the Friday, Sunday, so they might be a nice midweek pickup team to try to grab some guys from to get this game against Philly, and then at home against San Jose. That could be a 10-goal game. You never know. Every game seems to be like that nowadays. As we move a little bit further down, you have the front-loaded road back-to-back for Tampa Bay. That is going to be difficult for them, but they are a veteran team, and they could potentially play really well in both of those games. It's a lighter matchup the second night, so that is a little bit more favorable. Then they've got Chicago in the middle of the week, and then a tough matchup against Carolina on Saturday. So they might be the front half of the week pickup. If you're looking for a guy for Monday, Tuesday, then you swap them out on Thursday for somebody on Anaheim or something like that. That could be a play this week as well. You have Toronto. They have the back-to-back going into Friday. So Thursday, Friday at home against Calgary, and then the second night of the back-to-back against Vancouver. That's going to be tough. But as I mentioned before, the best schedule this week is going to be the Florida Panthers. Columbus at home, then they go on the road for Washington, back home against Carolina. And this is the one time where you would want to face Carolina. They are 30th in the NHL in goals against right now, which is very unusual. Then you've got the Blackhawks game on Sunday. So this is a really favorable schedule. So let's go see who you can pick up from the Florida Panthers. Now, the best ad from Florida is probably going to be Evan Rodriguez. He has gone 0 points in the last 4 games and only 9 shots, but he's been dealing with a minor issue. The good reason to get him is he's 3-position eligible, so he'll get in every single game regardless. And then he's got 8 points on the year, so 2 goals, 6 assists, 2 power play points, and 30 shots. He was really productive up until the last 4 games, so if you picked him up last week, that was not working out for you. But this week, he's got a nice schedule, so this would be probably your top offensive ad. On defense, Nico Mikkola playing really well in his last couple games. He's 2% owned, 3 assists, 10 shots, and then you get the hits and blocks as well over the last 4 games. So he's a pretty deep league play if you're looking for a defenseman. You also have Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's at 15%. This is probably the last time you'll stream OEL this year, as they're probably going to get Ekblad and Montour traveling with them on this road trip. So this could be the last of OEL's power play time for now, because I would imagine that those 2 other guys would get the power play time for PP1 and PP2. So this would be the opportunity to get him, and he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been great either. 1 goal, 1 power play point is a power play goal, is all he has this season. Forsling is another option, but he's getting 2 to 3 shots per game, but only 1 goal on the year. That's his only point in 11 games. So not necessarily the best pickup. And then if you're looking for another deep league play, Anton Lundell, He's got 3 points in his last 5 games, and he's getting a little bit of a better roster or lineup assignment now. Hopefully getting into some power play time before those guys get back, and then starting to pick up his overall play as we head into this favorable schedule. So these are some options that you guys have from Florida. Now, there are some other teams that you can pick from, and we'll get into that in just a second. But first, how much are you paying for your phone plan? Now, this is a data channel, so let me hit you with the most recent data from the BLS. They estimate that the current average phone plan costs about $114 a month, and that was before the pandemic inflation set in. Now, that seems insane to me, but what about your plan? Are you paying more than that? And if you are, you have to check out Mint Mobile. Now, I've partnered with Mint Mobile to help you, the Data Draft community, get premium wireless for as low as $15 a month. Yes, $15. Now, they offer unlimited talk and text, 5G network access, and mobile hotspots just like your major carrier. Now, if you know from watching this channel, we're always trying to find the best value wherever we can find it. And Mint Mobile uses the nation's largest 5G network, but they sell direct to you online. So they cut out the retail stores and the salespeople so that you can save money. Switching to Mint is extremely easy thanks to the digital eSIM cards. You can sign up and activate your service right now from your phone. And if you don't have an eSIM, they'll ship you one, a brand new SIM card for free. Now, this is too good of a deal to pass up, so that's why I'm passing this on to you guys. Head on over to the link in the description so you can start saving money today. Now, some of the other teams you can pick from this week, we mentioned before, Columbus, Dallas, Minnesota, Montreal. You're not going to want anybody from San Jose, Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Vancouver. And all of these schedules are pretty favorable. Only one back-to-back for most of these teams, except for Florida with no back-to-backs. There are a couple teams that have the 2-game light night counts. You're going to want to try to pick up those guys as well. We mentioned Columbus and Dallas have a little bit difficult schedules there. There are some other opportunities to pick guys up, but this means you're going to have some goalie streams to think about this week. So all the goaltenders over here, Demko's going to be owned up, Ottinger, Bobrovsky's probably owned up. You have Johansson at 77% owned, and he's getting a lot of the starts. He does have 2 shutouts on the year, so that's floating a lot of his numbers, but a .916 save percentage. And he's got 5 wins on the year, which is really helpful if you're in a league with points for wins. One of the guys that I've been getting a ton of questions about, especially with trades, is Joseph Woll. Now, this past week, he had an 866 save percentage. He's 73% owned, so he's a little bit over-owned at this point. One thing that I don't think a lot of fantasy managers have realized is that Toronto is not as good defensively as they normally are. They're normally a top 5 defensive team. Right now, they're mid-pack in terms of team defense, so they're not necessarily the best team to stream goaltenders from. And you can see Samsonov way down here at an 871 save percentage, and he's about 74% owned. So that's, high ownership for these guys, and it's not necessarily warranted right now. I know you want that team exposure, and it will come eventually, but it's not there right now. So if you're looking, in a light week, if you can pick those guys up, but they might be owned up. And you also have Jake Allen on a 4-game week, and he's got a .927 save percentage, .272 goals against, and he's only 25% owned. So he might be the better value play this week. And we'll get into his goaltender hub in just a minute. Now, as we look at a couple of these other guys, Merzlikins is 29% owned. He's got a .905, 8 games, 3 wins, so not a ton of wins there, but he is the starter in Columbus. Spencer Martin is also relatively good, .922 save percentage in a small 4-game sample size. Again, not many wins, but he is playing pretty well. Columbus with the 4-game week and a back-to-back. Then you also have DeSmith, and obviously Vancouver's defense is playing really well, and Demko is benefiting from that, but so is DeSmith. He's got a .905 and 2 wins out of 4 games. Then you have Stolars, who had a great first game and a pretty good second game, but not great in that last one on Saturday. He's got a 2.8 goals against, .902 save percentage. He'll probably see at least 1 game in the next 4 days, although they don't have the back-to-back. Scott Wedgwood is probably going to be your best option off the wire. He is 3% owned, and he's got a .911 save percentage, 2 wins in 3 starts. So he's been improving. He's one of those guys, a good goaltender on a good team, and on a week where they do have a back-to-back, you're going to want to pick him up for sure. That brings us to the Minnesota goaltending, and before we go there, let's go to the Goalie Hub to take a little bit closer look at this. So down here, all the way down here, you have both Minnesota goaltenders, 38 and a 34, which is really, really bad. And when you look at them individually, Gustafson just not having a good year, minus 6.7 goals saved above expected. The team defense just isn't the same without Matt Dumba and without Jared Spurgeon. They've been struggling to keep the puck out of their net, especially in the first period. They did come back last night and beat the Rangers, but it was a 5-4 game, and they had to pull their starter, which was Gustafson. Now, the save percentage, 871, is unownable. The 4.9 goals against is unownable. The 2 wins is okay because they are a pretty good team still, but they're just not playing good defense right now. But if you look at Marc-Andre Fleury, it's not that much better. So he's still below expected. The team exposure is the same. You're getting an 892 save percentage, which is slightly better, but 2.8 goals against isn't bad. And then you're getting 2 wins, which isn't bad either. He's had 2 good starts, 2 not good starts, and then he came in relief and won. This is a very tenuous situation. I wouldn't want exposure to these guys until they get Spurgeon back and they start playing a little bit better. I just dropped Fleury in my league, so that's something that I am advising, at least if you're in a shallow league. Maybe deep leagues you can't do that, but let's take a look at some of the goalies you can pick up this week, and we were mentioning Jake Allen, so we'll start with him if I can find him here. A 58.2, not bad at all. The team defense is going to be abysmal. We know that. But he's way above expected. 927 save percentage, 2.7, and 3 wins. So really good showing from Jake Allen. And Montreal they do have a very difficult schedule this week. There is the home back-to-back, so he will get one of those games at the very least. I don't know if you want to go pick up Montembeault. I believe he's way lower on this list. He's way down here at a 33, basically with those Minnesota guys. So I'm not sure if he's the guy, but some of the other guys that you might be able to pick up this week, you have one guy I wanted to mention who doesn't necessarily have the great schedule, but it's Lukas Dostal. So Dostal, he's been way above expected, 5.4. The team defense isn't there, and we know that. But a 920 save percentage, 5 wins, and a 2.8 goals against. Now, the same goals against, 2.8 for John Gibson, 902 save percentage, and 1 win. So you're looking at a really stark contrast between Dostal and Gibson. Dostal's been the better goaltender right now. So if he's available on your wire, he's only 38% owned. Gibson's 32% owned. So the ownership is pretty normal for what they're doing on the ice right now. But this is a guy you'd probably want access to, and they do have that Sunday game, which you might want access to because it's pretty much a guaranteed win against San Jose. Now, just looking at Joseph Woll, I mentioned him before. The 928 save percentage is good. He's way above expected. The team defense needs to be a little bit better. The goals against is pretty good, and the wins are good, but he did have a poor last week with an 866 save percentage, so keep that in mind. One of the guys that's been playing pretty well is Petr Mrazek and Arvid Soderblom. We'll look at Mrazek right now. He's above expected. The team defense is better than what we probably would have thought for Chicago at this point in the season. Making a ton of saves, 923 save percentage, 2.8 goals against, and 3 wins. So on a night where you can stream him, that would not be a bad idea. I don't have his ownership off the top of my head, but he's probably available in some shallow leagues. It is a risky situation depending on the matchup, but you do want to take a look at that. For Columbus, there's a couple of guys to take a look at here. Chinakhov, this is a small sample size. He just has the 1 game played with 5 shots. But he is back. He was a shooter and a goal scorer last year. So if you're looking for a Hail Mary, that would be a decent option. I have Boone Jenner. He's been very complete, kind of hot and cold. You have Marchenko, who's getting second line minutes and some power play time as well. But a guy I wanted to talk about here was Jack Roslovic, who is a 60 on the completeness rating, getting a bunch of blocks, getting 2.2 shots per game. Not necessarily the best file, but 2 goals, 4 assists, 2 power play points. He's only 2% owned. By comparison, you have Adam Fantilli, who is 29% owned. They've got the same stats, 2 goals, 4 assists, 2 power play points. He's got a little bit better shot volume, but these guys are not that different in terms of what they're doing, and the ownership is very different. So 60 on the completeness rating for both of them, and Roslovic is available in almost every league. Another guy I wanted to touch on is Ivan Provorov. You can see it right here. He's getting assists. He's getting power play assists from that power play 1 usage that he was getting with Werenski out, and he's still getting some power play time as they split up their units. And then 2.5 blocks per game is really good as well. He's only 22% owned. So again, a really incredible blocks number, 28 blocks, and that's in 11 games. So that's obviously 2.55 blocks per game. So he's been very proficient for those 3 categories, and he is available in a lot of different league formats. A guy I wanted to get to is Voronkov. So he's been given top 6 minutes here. Not the craziest shot volume, but getting some power play time. And in the past 5 games, he's got 2 goals, 2 assists, a power play point. He's on a 3-game point streak, and he's playing with Fantilli and Marchenko on that second line. So getting a little bit of blocks, getting a little bit of power play production, some goals. I don't know how much of a file he has in the past. I haven't heard of him before this, so there's not a lot to go off of, but he is relatively complete at a 65. So this could be a decent deep league play. He's 0% owned. So these are some guys you can take a look at from Columbus. Next, let's take a look at Dallas. Similar schedule in terms of what days they're playing, but different in the sense that they have a couple of guys that are trending in the right direction. Matt Duchene, an 18-point increase up to a 58. He had a pretty decent week. He's on a 5-game point streak that ended on Saturday, but he had 2 goals and 3 assists, 5 points in those 5 games. So he was heating up a little bit. The point total isn't that great, but the shot volume is 2.2. That's okay. The blocks are all right there too as well, and he's dual position eligible. Now, another guy you might look at is Mason Marchment, usually a hitter, 2 goals, 2 assists in his last 5 games, 14 shots. He's only 3% owned. So he's been improving as well. And he's finally, he's got a huge price tag on him for his AAV, and he's starting to live up to that, at least the last week. And let's hope he can continue it into this week where they have that good schedule. Another guy I wanted to mention, Wyatt Johnston. Relatively complete, 61 on the completeness rating. 70 is usually my barometer for what I want in my 12-team league, but not bad. 0.7 points per game, 0.3 goals per game, 2.4 shots per game, and a couple of blocks as well. So he's been relatively productive. He's got a goal and an assist in his last 4 games and 12 shots. So averaging 3 shots per game over the last 4. And then you also have Evgeny Dadonov. Now, he's more of a goal scorer, 67th percentile there with 0.3 goals per game. But he's 1% owned, and he's got 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points in his last 6 games. It's just a lot of low shot volume. That's the only reason why you're going to want to stay away from him. But if you're just looking for goals, he's been, a second, third line type of player for Dallas, and it's a nice week for them. So you could try to target him for goal production specifically. Now, another guy you might want to look at is Nils Lundkvist, just for the power play 2 exposure, but he hasn't really done much this year in terms of getting that time and making it count. So this is sort of like a long distance, throw one out and see if it sticks. But Nils Lundkvist was getting that power play 2 times. So if they're going to start playing that second unit a little bit more, that could be another option for you. Now, up next, we have Minnesota. They played a really tough game last night against the Rangers. I was watching that one. They fell behind and then they came back. So that's an encouraging sign. And one of the guys that we've been looking at for most of the year is Ryan Hartman. He's been playing really well lately. 17 change. He's up to a 71 on the completeness rating. The goal production is really good. 7 goals in 11 games. That's what you're mainly owning him for. Aside from the line assignment, he's usually playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. At least that was the trend last year. I'm not sure exactly what the lines are if they've been shuffling them as of late, but 0.9 points per game. The goal production's good. 2.6 shots per game. Getting a little bit of power play time, and then a couple hits and blocks along the way as well. He is only 57% owned. He's got 6 goals, 3 assists in his last 7 games, and 20 shots there as well. So Hartman is a decent option this week. You also have Marco Rossi, who's nipping at his heels right here. Change 12 spots up to a 56, and he's been getting some goal production as well. He's got 5 and 11, so not quite as good as Hartman, but he's relatively low ownership, 7% owned. 4 goals, 2 assists in his last 6 games. So he's been improving, finally kind of turning into the player that they drafted him to be. And if you're looking for some defense, if you're looking for guys that are quarterbacking the power play, you'd go after Kalen Addison. That's where most of his damage is done. 0.27 power play points per game is pretty good, and it's mostly assists. But 2 assists on the power play in the last 3 games, that's the main reason you'd own him, and he's only 5% owned. But another guy I'm taking a look at, and I watched him last night pretty closely, is Brock Faber. Looking really good over the last couple games. He's got 2 assists, 4 blocks in his last 3 games, and he's got a goal on the year, which is nice to see as well. He reminds me a little bit of Charlie McAvoy in terms of, McAvoy's rookie year and what he could potentially project to be, but there's not a lot of success right now in Minnesota. They might want to try something like trying Brock Faber on one of the power play units in the absence of Spurgeon. So something to keep an eye on, kind of just projecting there. I thought he looked good last night, and he's been not necessarily improving last week, but he's been getting more ice time. He's one of their ice time leaders, which is another reason to grab him. Now, up next, we have Montreal, and they're a team I mentioned last week, and some of those guys I was giving out last week paid off, and one of those was Brendan Gallagher. So if you picked him up when I gave him out last week, I believe he was around 0 or 1% ownership. 2 goals, 2 assists, 2 power play points, and 12 shots in the last 3 games. So that was really encouraging for Brendan Gallagher, as his file won't come up. And Gallagher used to be a shot volume guy. It's starting to get there, 2.5 shots per game, getting some power play time as well. 3 power play points in 11 games. The goal production is pretty good, 4 in 11. And then he usually gets a little bit of hits and blocks just because he's always sticking his nose in there. And he's 1% owned, so you can go out there and grab him. And this would be a nice deep league play. But you also have Sean Monahan, who I've been monitoring for the last little while, and I gave him out last week. He's 94th percentile in goals, 6 goals in 11 games. The shot volume is pretty good, 2.6 shots per game, getting some power play time, 3 power play points on the year. And he's just under a point per game. So really good production out of Sean Monahan. He's a 64 on the completeness rating, basically rounded up to a 65. So he's another guy in a categories league that you could turn to, especially in a relatively favorable scheduled week this week. But you also have Nick Suzuki, who's a little bit more complete, 72 overall, and he's getting most of the power play one time and the exposure to guys like Matheson and Caulfield. So this would be a much better play, and he is available in some shallow leagues, 58% owned, 3 goals, 3 assists, 2 power play points in his last 5 games. So he's been playing pretty well, but still not productive like Monahan. He's just a little bit under Monahan in terms of point per game. But that is the number 1 center, so he is going to get the better opportunities, and he is more complete. So if you have that available to you on your waiver wire, and then also if you have Mike Matheson, this is a no-brainer. One of the most complete defensemen, 3 shots per game, 0.45 power play points per game, 2.27 blocks per game, getting some goals as well, 2 goals in 11 games. So he's one of the most complete defensemen out there. He's one of those D4, D5s that can really make an impact on your lineup. And if he's available, he's 62% owned. But if he is, go out and grab him. Now up next, we have Tampa Bay, and they're very top heavy. You know the guys that you're going to want there, Braden Point, Kucherov, etc. But Tanner Jeannot increasing to a 60. He was up almost 10 points last week. On his completeness rating, 3 hits per game, which is what you're drafting him for. You're also getting him for some goals. He's got 2 goals in 11. He's got 5 points in 11 games, so he's getting a little bit of offensive production. You'd like to see a little bit more shot volume, but if they elevate him in the lineup, that's good news. And I'm not sure if they necessarily are now, but they were when they had some injuries. So that was something that kind of boosted him a little bit this season. And he is relatively ownable at 18%. He's got 12 hits in his last 3 games, so that's even better at 4 hits per game over the last couple. Another guy you want to take a look at is Alex Barry-Boulet. Really deep league play. He's been improving over the last little bit. 3 goals, 3 assists, a power play point in his last 6 games. 1% owned, so he's a deep league play for you. 0.67 points per game is not bad. The goal production is pretty good, 3 goals in 9 games. And then the shot volume is not crazy. The power play usage isn't great, but he does have a power play point. But again, he's very low ownership, 1% owned, and he's on 6 points in his last 6 games. Not necessarily a point streak, but productive over his last 6. Then you also have Nick Paul, who's been kind of regressing, going in the wrong direction, but he's relatively complete still at a 68, getting that power play time, getting a couple of hits and blocks along the way, and some goals. And power play goals at that if you're in a league that weights those a little bit differently. So he has been going the wrong direction, but he is a guy at only 33% owned that you could get access to some form of that power play or top 6. So not a lot of options in Tampa Bay, but these are some that you could look at. Up next, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they are extremely top heavy. Good news is some of their top guys are playing really well. Morgan Rielly has been really good this year. People thought Klingberg was going to take things over, and Morgan Rielly kind of stepped up. He's an 80 overall, really complete across the board here. 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points in 11 games, along with about 2 shots per game and a 1.82 blocks per game. So pretty good there and really stable across the board. Somebody that you could potentially own this week, not a lot in terms of what you would want to pick up. Calle Jarnkrok's been going in the wrong direction, but he has been one of those guys elevated in the lineup from time to time. He's got 2 assists in his last 2 games, 3% owned, and I believe he's dual position eligible, center, left wing. Other than that, there's not a lot going on in terms of their bottom 6 or their D, in terms of guys that you would want to own. Tyler Bertuzzi, however, isn't owned up. He's 32% owned. He has been relatively disappointing. 2 power play points in 11 games. He's only 2 shots per game. was closer to 3 or above 3 last year for Boston when he was playing well. The hits are pretty good, 1.18 hits per game, but you'd like to see a little bit more considering that's what he's been brought in for. And speaking of hits, you have Ryan Reeves on this team, but he's only been averaging 2 hits per game, which is not like him, and he does nothing else. So you're only getting him for hits, and when it's only 2 hits per game, that's not necessarily ideal and what you're looking for. But last but not least, let's get to Vancouver, because there are a couple guys I wanted to talk about here and give you, because if you're in a 12-team league, Filip Hronek is maybe there for you. He's been relatively productive, in fact, incredibly productive. 6-game point streak, 3 power play points, and he's been one of those guys with some peripheral coverage and getting a little bit of power play time. He's 69% owned, and he's a point per game guy right now. It's all assists, which is not the best, but considering he's not fully owned up and he's getting you some power play exposure to this red hot Vancouver power play, that is something to take a look at. 1.27 blocks per game. So that's really encouraging as well. And then you also have a little bit of shot volume, 2 shots per game. But I picked him up a week ago, and he's been relatively productive for me, at least with the assists on the power play. So one guy that might be available for you. Another guy that might be available for you, Anthony Beauvillier. He's a 4th liner right now, which is a little bit confusing because he's been relatively productive. 2 goals, 2 assists in his last 3 games. So really good in limited ice time. He's been kind of underwhelming offensively, but he was top 6 last year. So if he can make his way up into the lineup, get some power play time, but he's been changing a lot, so improving a lot, almost a 60 now, 59 in terms of his completeness rating, and he's probably available for you in every league. He's 5% owned. Then you also have Carson Soucy. Hits and blocks defenseman, 1.3 hits, 1.4 blocks. Not the best, but you're getting some exposure there. The goal production's relatively good, 2 goals in 9 games. He's getting a little bit of power play time, 2 power play points in those 9 games as well. And he's only 2% owned. So a goal, 3 assists, 5 hits, 8 blocks in his last 4 games. And they do have a good schedule this week, 2% owned for Carson Soucy. But that's going to do it for the guys on the waiver wire. Let's take a look at some trends from last week and some hot guys that maybe you want to pick up as they continue, even if they're in a 3-game week. The number 1 riser last week was Lawson Crouse, and he was really an excellent pickup if you found him on the waiver wire. 14% owned, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points, 2 of those on the power play, 11 shots and 8 hits in his 4 games over the past week, and on a 4-game point streak, no less. So really impressive from Crouse. He's a 75 completeness rating, so relatively complete, 14% owned. He's a guy you definitely want in your lineup, at least right now, getting some power play time, top 6 in Arizona, and they're playing relatively well, at least considering what kind of team we thought they'd be. Pietrangelo is back and healthy, and he rocketed up the boards because of that. 73, almost a 74 on the completeness rating. 4 assists, 2 power play points, 9 shots, 11 blocks in his last 3 games. That's not including Sunday, which is today as I'm recording this. Then you've got some Calgary Flames that woke up. Nazem Kadri, still a 55, not great, but he is improving. 23 points up to that 55 level. He's got a goal, 3 assists, 2 power play points, 10 shots, and 5 hits in his last 3 games, and a 3-game point streak at that. He's 46% owned. You also have Mackenzie Weegar, who's been getting some power play time, I believe, with Anderson not playing. He's got a goal, 3 assists, 3 power play points, 11 shots, a couple hits and blocks in his last 3 games, and he's 61% owned. So he's a really complete defenseman right now at almost an 80, 79, and he's 61% owned, so he's probably not available for you in a lot of league formats, but in some he is. And if he's been getting the power play time and they're finally starting to score on it, maybe you ride him out until Anderson comes back, and maybe there's a question mark as to who's getting that power play. But for right now, Weegar's been getting it, and he's been doing a lot with it. Speaking of power play, Justin Schultz, 2% owned, 4 assists, 2 on the power play, 9 blocks in his last 3 games, and a 3-game point streak at that. So Vince Dunn is usually the power play guy there. They're not playing well at all in Seattle, so maybe they're trying something else, and Schultz has been getting some time. And he's a 56, so not the most complete, but 2% owned. That's really good in a deep league format. You could pick him up and get some power play exposure there. You also have Philip Kurashev, 66 overall on the completeness rating. He's improved a lot over the past little bit. A goal and 2 assists against Florida. That's not including today. Again, they're playing today in New Jersey. That's going to be a tough matchup, but he's 4% owned. So another deep league play for you. We mentioned Beauvillier. We have Yanni Gourde down at the bottom, that Seattle Kraken team I was just talking about. 8% owned, a goal and 4 assists, and he's got a 4-game point streak right now. So he's one of the only guys in Seattle that's playing particularly well right now. Then you have JJ Peterka at 4% owned, 3 goals, 3 assists, 14 shots in 5-game point streak right now. Second line with Middlestat and Olofsson. I believe Cousins will go back into that spot once he's healthy, but right now that's the line, and he's been getting a ton of ice time. So 4% owned, he's probably one of the best pickups right now, just considering that Buffalo has been picking it up offensively. They beat Toronto last night, so that is an interesting guy to pick up. And then we mentioned Voronkov earlier. 2 goals, 2 assists, a power play point in 5 games this year, 3-game point streak, second line with Fantilli and Marchenko, and he's 0% owned. So just a couple of guys to bring to your attention as you're looking for some trends and hot streaks to get out in front of. Some other guys that we mentioned, I mentioned Buchnevich last week. He's been improving again, up almost 30 points, still only a 48, but now he's healthy. He's trying to get back into the swing of things. You have Evander Kane having an incredible week as I trade him in my data draft league, which maybe is not the best idea, but he's been really hot lately. You have a couple of other guys. We mentioned Gallagher, Matt Patra, who we talked about last week. He's been keeping it up this week. Same with Alex Tuck. Bemstrom is a guy that you could get this week for Columbus. And Tage Thompson has woken up. That's really nice news for me as I have him in the Creators League. And you can read the list. I'm not going to read every name on here. But that's going to do it for this one. I want to know how you're doing in your leagues. Let me know in the comments section below. I'll post my record at the end of this week. It's not going to be good. I'm going to lose at least 2 of my matchups this week. Some of my guys have gone ice cold at this time, and there's not much I can do about it. But let me know how your team's doing. That's going to do it for this one. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.